September 1837. Minutes of a conference assembled in committee of the whole church at Kirtland on Sunday, the 3rd of September, 1837. At 9 o'clock in the morning, George W. Robinson was called upon to take minutes of the conference. Sidney Rigdon then presented Joseph Smith, Jr. to the church, to know if they still looked upon and would still receive and uphold him as the president of the whole church, and the vote was unanimous in the affirmative. President Smith then presented Sidney Rigdon and Frederick G. Williams as his counselors, and to constitute with himself the 3 first presidents of the church. Voted unanimously in the affirmative, except for Frederick G. Williams, which was not carried unanimously. President Smith then introduced Oliver Cowdery, Joseph Smith Sr., Hiram Smith, and John Smith for assistant counselors. These last 4, together with the first 3, are to be considered the heads of the church. Carried unanimously. Voted that Newell K. Whitney hold his office as bishop and continue to act as such in Kirtland, and that Reynolds Cahoon and Vincent Knight continue to act as counselors to the bishop. The 12 apostles were then presented one by one, when Thomas B. Marsh, David W. Patton, Brigham Young, Heber C. Kimball, Orson Hyde, Parley P. Pratt, Orson Pratt, William Smith, and William E. McClellan were received unanimously in their apostleship. Luke S. Johnson, Lyman E. Johnson, and John F. Boynton were rejected and disfellowshipped, though privileged with confessing and making satisfaction. Elder Boynton, who was the only one of the 3 present at the time, arose and endeavored to confess, justifying himself in his former conduct by reason of the failure of the bank. His conduct was strongly protested against by Elder Brigham Young in a plain and energetic manner, stating various reasons why he could not receive him into fellowship until a hearty repentance and confession were manifested. Elder Young was followed by Elder Marsh, who acquiesced in testimony and resolutions. President Rigdon then addressed the assembly, showing the cause of the difficulty with Elders Boynton and Johnson in leaving their calling to attend their occupations. Elder Boynton again rose and still attributed his difficulties to the failure of the bank, stating that he understood the bank was instituted by the will of God, and he had been told that it should never fail, let men do what they would. President Smith then arose and stated that if this had been declared, no one had authority from him for so doing, and he had always said that unless the institution was conducted on righteous principles it would not stand. A vote was then taken to know if the congregation was satisfied with Elder Boynton's confession. Carried in the negative. Conference adjourned for 1 hour. Conference reassembled at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, opened by reading, singing, and prayer. The president then arose and said he would call upon the church to know if they were satisfied with their high council, and should proceed to name them individually. John Johnson, Joseph Coe, Joseph C. Kingbury, and Martin Harris were objected to, also John P. Green, but his case went over until he should be present. Noah Packard, Jared Carter, Samuel H. Smith were sustained. Oliver Granger, Henry G. Sherwood, William Marks, Mayhew Hillman, Harlow Redfield, Asahel Smith, Phinehas Richards, and David Dort were chosen to fill the places of those objected to, and Thomas Grover having moved west, John Smith, chosen one of the presidents of the church, all having belonged to the High Council. The president then called upon the congregation to know if the recently appointed presidents of the 70s should stand in their calling. Voted that John Gaylord, James Forster, Salmon G., Daniel S. Miles, Joseph Young, Josiah Butterfield, and Levi W. Hancock should retain their offices as presidents of 70s. John Gould was objected to. The president then arose and made some remarks concerning the former presidents of the 70s, the calling and authority of their priesthood, etc. Voted that the old presidents of the 70s, who were high priests, be referred to the quorum of the high priests, and also that if any members of the quorum of the 70s should be dissatisfied and would not submit to the present order and receive these last presidents, the latter should have power to demand their licenses, and the former should no longer be considered members of the church. Conference closed by prayer by the president. Joseph Smith, Jr. President. George W. Robinson, Clerk.